I changed into civilian clothes at the barracks, had a short meal at the mess hall, and then walked outside the fort. And took a bus to Waikiki and got off, whereat I changed into my swimming suit, which I had just bought, and waded out into the ocean to celebrate, just standing there, all amazed and grateful. Catamarans and surfers swept by on their way out to catch the waves. I sat under a large and far-spreading banyan tree and drank a small Mai Tai. Wondering just where in the heck I was going to live. Then I got dressed and walked the beaches, behind all the hotels, intending to go to the West End, where I'd noted an R&R center, near Hickam Air Force Base, and then back the other way to Diamond Head. I didn't call anyone. They wouldn't have believed me. Besides, I had to process it all first. I was about halfway back, near to the Sheraton Hotel, when a Japanese girl asked me to take her and her friend's picture. She just motioning to me to do it. I took several pictures. She was stunning and older than her friends, who were not as mature as they were at some kind of giggling stage. I told myself, keep on walking after this, or risk being hit by a love meteor falling out of the sky. Her friends then went back into the hotel, which turned out to be the Pink Royal Hawaiian, but she remained, we looking at and into each other. Time had frozen. My feet hadn't listened to my mind. She made some hand motions, or else she was doing a slow dance. She was relatively tall and wore a skirt well above her knees. Perhaps I was about to be hit by an asteroid, and just when I had other important things to do. Just then, a beach waitress came over and asked if we wanted drinks. I said, yes, waitress, and asked for 2 Singapore slings before I could tell myself not to. Well, that clinched it. We sat at a table, taking in the view of the waves that had rolled all the way here from Japan. I'd like to say that I talked with her a while, but she spoke very little English, although some, she often having to refer to a Japanese-English dictionary, and, of course, I spoke no Japanese. Her name was Kimiyo Wada. I found out that she had just arrived and told her somehow that I just did too. We employed a lot of sign language, assisted by her broken English, that I found myself soon using too. We passed the time. She was wonderful, and she liked me, and I liked her. We'd both been captivated. I felt guilty, though. I had been instructed to live and love, true, but in the first hour of the first day, the fates had evidently just put one over on me. After a while, Kimiyo, somehow, after a few false starts, asked if we could see all the sights together. I said, yes, tourist, but in Japanese. I thought deeply, why do these kind of things happen to me? Well, it would be more fun to see the sights with someone, even if we could hardly communicate to each other. It was a challenge, and I still felt powerful. Or was high on the air we had here. Not to mention the stiff drink. Well, I suppose we both felt extra wild and free from being on vacation. We walked off together as if it was our destiny and took in the local scenes first, wandering here and there for many blocks, then heading inland for a block. In Oahu, Hawaii, in 1970, with a handsome young man named Patrick, a beautiful Japanese young woman named Kimiyo, and a beautiful Irish girl named Colleen, who has red hair. I need a place to live. I noted a room for rent sign. A girl named Colleen answered. I inquired, telling her it was just for me. She was Irish and good-looking, with red hair, freckles, and long legs, but she was all business.
I am Colleen O'Donnell.
And I am St. Patrick.
Good Irish. Now I know I can trust you. You can sleep on the back porch. Cheap. We have netting there.
It's a deal. I love porches. I paid her for 2 weeks, noting that I'd most likely end up staying longer.
Jane Fonda is coming to town for an FTA rally.
Sounds like quite a spectacle. I wouldn't miss it. What is that scent?
Jasmine, plumeria, hibiscus, orchid, and passion flower. I have them all out on the porch. Come see.
She held out a pink orchid for me to sniff, then said about herself,
I was once another kind of flower child, but I suppose that I outgrew it, and now I am a much too serious grad student. But I graduate in a few months, and then it will all be worth it. I already have a job waiting for me back in Oregon, where I can also attend to my sick mother.
Colleen tried to speak to Kimio but got no answer. She doesn't speak much English, and I don't speak Japanese.
Ha, the perfect couple.
Or if the man is deaf and the woman is blind. She laughed again, having now relaxed her business posture.
I'll be back later. Have fun.
We left. I didn't really need to tell her that we'd just met a few hours ago. In Oahu, Hawaii in 1970, with a handsome young man named Patrick, a beautiful Japanese young woman named Kimio, and a beautiful young Chinese girl named Alice.
I need a vehicle.
What?
While we were touring the international marketplace, I picked up a newspaper and then conveyed to Kimio that I needed to buy a motorcycle, and had just picked one out, a 180cc. We went over to a hotel and I called and inquired about it. It was still for sale and we could come over in the late afternoon. We strolled around some more. The place was casting its spell on us. We found a bus to Waipahu, which was out past Pearl City, which route would also let us see some sights. From the bus, we had to walk about a half mile, though a country-like area filled with sugarcane fields. I paid for the motorcycle, got the papers, and we rode off picking up the H1 freeway. Now we could go anywhere. It was near dark, which happens around 6:30 in the sub or near tropics. We stopped for dinner near the University of Hawaii in the Manoa Valley. We discovered many and various more ways to communicate beyond words, but we still had to resort to the translation dictionary. I located the graduate level computer center at the university. We went in and looked around. They had a small IBM computer. I helped someone named Alice Wong with a computer programming problem.
You work IBM?
Yeah, I do, but I'm in the Army now, on a military leave of absence. See you next time, maybe.
Okay, me here.
We rode around some more along the well-lit Alleyway Canal, then got off and toured a park full of gardens, and then sat on an ocean wall in Waikiki for quite a while, translating words. The moon rose over Diamond Head, just like on a postcard. It was 9 p.m. We rode off and put the motorcycle away at my new place, then walked over to the Royal Hawaiian. She signaled me to wait while she went up to her room. She came back with a blanket and we headed through the hotel and out onto the beach. We lay there, talked, and then cuddled and kissed eventually. Well, I was supposed to live and love. People must have thought we were newlyweds. It wasn't really that I wanted to make a life of meeting tourists. Well, it had just happened. What could I do? The atmosphere was overpowering. Kimio covered us with another lighter blanket, and she opened her blouse many buttons down. I felt guilty again, but then remembered again that I was supposed to live and love. Well, Kimio would only be here for 3 weeks, so this wasn't going to turn into a permanent relationship. She took my shirt off, but we kept everything else on. She was thrilled with the hair on my chest. Now and then someone wandered by and smiled at us. So, this is the Army, I thought. Truth had once again proved stranger than fiction. Around 11 or so, we parted and went back to our separate abodes. Not bad for the first day. I was tired. I bid Colleen a good night and thank you, and went off to sleep in my fine porch room.
There's a fine swimming hole that you could take Kimio to.
I didn't think Colleen had figured me as being in the Army, for my hair had grown out from the basic style during the last few weeks of leave. I even said some words about how could our troops even know why the North Vietnamese should be their enemy. We talked a while. Well, Kimio proved to be a beautiful, bright, and wonderfully warm human being. I was still asleep when she came over the next morning, waking me up slowly by stroking my hair and my chest. At first I thought I was dreaming, and then I remembered that the stars had fallen on me yesterday, out of nowhere again. I got dressed, Kimio still sitting there, and we went over to the all-you-can-eat breakfast at her hotel. We were soon away on the motorcycle, traveling along the oceanside cliff roads through rich Kahala, then passing the snorkeling paradise of Hanauma Bay, and then winding down around the southeast shores, passing the famous body surfing beaches with their massive waves, especially Sandy Beach, and were soon roaring on toward the quiet cove where they had filmed From Here to Eternity, wherein we lunched and swam and walked from one lava pool to the next, soon finding the attraction called the Blowhole, where the crashing waves underneath found their spraying way through a lava tube, splashing out of the hole like a whale blows out water. Then, after watching the waves blast against the rocks, we were off to see the Japanese temple in the Valley of the Palis, which was actually a Buddhist temple. Nearby was a bamboo forest with shoots at least 4 inches thick, and it had many paths leading off to quiet places, with macadamia trees and ponds with swans and tropical fish. It was a warm afternoon, although the temperature in Hawaii hardly ever exceeded 84 degrees, and I was lucky to find the native swimming hole that Colleen had told me about. Kimio and I having had to walk about 200 yards through a jungle path before coming out to the surprising vista, for this was a spot well hidden far off the tourist path. Some very brown-skinned Hawaiians were jumping from the high rocks into the water. Before I knew it, Kimio was diving off the cliff and was dropping about 35 feet into the water at the base of the waterfalls, the deepest part of the water.
They do this in Japan.
So I flew at once through the air like some kind of Tarzan and splashed down into the cooling depths. I took a picture of it and have it to this day. We took a shortcut, heading back through the Pali Tunnel, stopping at the Pali Lookout to see the place where King Kamehameha had won a decisive battle long ago, by pushing the enemy over the cliffs to fall to their deaths below. I brought Kimio back to her hotel to have some social time with her tour group, promising to meet her in the vacant lifeguard stand later in the evening. It was like you said, well hidden, with the entrance close to the like highway sign. Colleen seemed eager to know more, and so I went on to tell her of my day as if she was my new confidant.
You will be in Japan again tonight?
In a manner of speaking, but not as again, for tonight will be the first time if it goes that way. We just met 2 days ago, an hour after we'd each arrived in Waikiki.
Holy love, Hawaii can have a romantic effect on all who pass her way.
It's like I just woke up inside a fresh and sensuous scented flower.
Bring Kimio over if you want, and we'll entertain the evening walkers. I'm really starting to enjoy my evening social hours with the passers-by. I think that I need you two here with me to work it better.
We'll be there. In Oahu, Hawaii in 1970 with a handsome young man named Patrick, a beautiful Japanese young woman named Kimio, and a beautiful young Irish woman named Colleen who has red hair and freckles. Here we are, Colleen.
Good, what shall we do?
Let's have a food party tonight. We'll invite perfect strangers to eat with us. We'll just grab them from the beaches and the street, any place.
Can we do that?
Start boiling some water, Colleen. I'm going out to buy some wine and to gather some people.
But,
It will be wonderful. Hawaii is a very friendly place. And it was, for most of the people invited were delighted to join us, and we had many an insight that evening into the most eccentric and wonderful offbeat characters, from runaways to Chinese junketeers, Surfers from Australia, Chinese refugees from Hong Kong, sunburned tourists to natives, and even a Hare Krishna devotee who invited us to his temple for a feast. We had many laughs, stories, and good times, even offering people sips of wine. Here we were, at the crossroads of the world, meeting Polynesians, Brazilians, Japanese, Samoans, and of course many wonderful mixtures and half-breeds, for this was the city where all the points of the compass met. The pasta and sauce really flowed that night, and I noted that Colleen had a happy smile that perhaps she hadn't known for a while, for whatever reason. A toast to our grass shack, everyone. May we be in heaven a half an hour before the devil knows we're dead. I suppose that few knew where that saying had come from. Kimiyo half-acted and half-told us of some Japanese tales, in her broken English that she'd learned in school, but had ignored and left unused until the need arose in Hawaii. All applauded. We lit some torches and sat back drinking Kona coffee, as one story by one person led to one by another. Soon we'd all joined in with the kind of memories that made everyone warm and overflowing with emotion. Colleen told about her activist days as an anti-war protest organizer, how she'd come to Hawaii on a campaign, had stayed on to live here. The surfers talked about their roaming of the world, looking for the perfect wave, and here, riding the tubes of blue up on the North Shore. It wasn't until 11 p.m. that Kimiyo and I arrived at the lifeguard stand. It was about 20 feet high. It was a covered box and it commanded a wide view. It was never occupied after 6 at night, and now it belonged to us. The moon's glimmer path bounced along the waves, coming right under our feet. We talked about the melting pot of Hawaii. The Japanese number the most, almost 25% of the population. The native Hawaiians only amounting to 10% or so, having long ago succumbed to Western diseases brought by Captain Cook. As for Haoles, or white people like me, we were about 20%. The rest of the place being a mixture of the entire rest of the world, although heavily Oriental and with many beautiful blends also, as when a Portuguese would marry a Tahitian and have children showing the best traits of both. Near midnight, we took our blanket down to the beach, having the infinite energy that love brings, thinking to get by on a few hours less sleep. You know where those waves come from, don't you?
Yes, I know, from 1,000 miles to call me home. I with you on wonderful vacation. I in love you, haven't I? I wait in Japan for you anytime, excited by infinite future.
And I love your spirit. For all I knew, I may have just told her to kiss a camel. However, such a romantic look came into her eyes that I thought we weren't going to wait until 2 in the morning to make love on the beach when all was really quiet. She held me closer, and we waited for the last song from the outdoor torchlight show to die out. The famous Hawaiian wedding song that visitors always requested. Error in scanning my old notes here. Sorry, readers. In the morning, Kimiyo came over and woke me up in a rather interesting way that is left to the imagination. After breakfast, we were soon motorcycling through the maze of streets and housing behind Waikiki known as the Jungle. Then past the Aliwai Canal, next passing the zoo, and then coming around and passing the Outrigger West, and heading down the alley behind the Princess Kaiulani Hotel, and back around to the Pacific Beach Hotel, all just for fun. We went off on a bus with her tour group out to Paradise Park and the Polynesian Cultural Center for the day, which both had everything interesting to see, from gardens to tropical birds to bamboo jungles to old Hawaiian setups. We saw a good stage show that night, one about old Hawaii, followed by some really funny comedians and magicians who soon had us up on stage. That will teach us not to sit in the first row. In the days to come, there were fern grottos, glass-bottom boats, mountain climbing, starlit skies and romantic nights, drenched in the fragrances of sensation that made Hawaii's influence undeniable to even the most love-impaired person. Kimiyo kissed me like there was no tomorrow. And perhaps there wasn't, for her, since she'd be back in Japan in a few weeks slaving away, as she told me, on a production line. One day we circled the entire island, even a stretch on the northwest shore that cars couldn't get through. In the mountain valleys are found such things as waterfalls, pools, bamboo forests, and groves of fruit trees, including banana, mango, breadfruit, tangerine trees, wild oranges, and passion fruit. There are also sugar cane and pineapple fields. Honolulu is a city of intrigue, but racially democratic, and is centered on Diamond Head, which had its last eruption in 5000 BC, named much later on when some British sailors picked up some gleaming crystals and though they had discovered diamonds. In Oahu, Hawaii in 1970, with a handsome young man named Patrick in the Army in Fort Shafter. When my 2 weeks of freedom were up, I went into work at the fort, and so I could only see Kimio in the evenings and on weekends. She had extended her 3-week vacation to 4. Ben gave me tens of thousands of lines of computer code to look at, for starters, pointing out the problematic areas. It took me about a week to get through it all, and this was but the beginning of it. Meanwhile, he'd brought up the tape delivery job, touting it as a great opportunity to see the world, although he and his team had seen enough of it. Thanks. While I couldn't speak or learn Japanese all that well, I could read computer programs like a novel. I was able to patch the code, making Ben very happy. He gave me some more, and he said I could take more with me on my travels in the future, in case I got bored, but that I didn't really have to work on it while traveling. I absorbed it all, now even quicker, having noted its styles and fixed it. I went down to the snack bar for a while to talk with the other soldiers. One guy, namely Paul, had made it all the way to the computer command on the basis of his taking only one night course in basic programming, which he failed. But the Army kept every warm body that came its way, and so they'd put him to work running the Xerox machine when they discovered his ineptitude. Another soldier, Vince, my supposed backup in the field, had indeed come straight from the gangland of the Bronx, and he was ever amazed at this seemingly foreign territory that was even long ago a part of the United States. I passed through the barracks on my way to the PX after work and saw the drugged-out men playing poker and otherwise shuffling aimlessly around the game room, looking like they had somehow brought the ghetto with them. My first month had passed. On the night that Kimio left Hawaii to fly back to Japan, I walked alone to the lifeguard stand and sat there for a long time, just basking in the beauty and peace that Kimio had brought to me so lovingly. I looked out across the waves and wondered what strange lands lie beyond. For now, I knew little of those, and it was but a dream to muse about the far eastern side of the world. Well, I was to leave for Korea with some computer tapes in several weeks or so and find out. The next night as well, I retreated to the lifeguard stand. After dark, not sad really, but needing time to make a transition. Well, thanks to Kimio, I was much the better man. She'd told me that I'd better be all right after she left, she unselfishly instructing me to find love if I couldn't come to her, which we both knew the Army wouldn't let me do, for underneath all my apparent freedom, I was still, in the end result, a man of military servitude. Nevertheless, she'd given me her address, and we both knew I'd at least come to visit sometime. As I sat up there in my lifeguard perch reading some poems by moonlight, I heard someone climbing the ladder, and looking down, I saw Colleen carrying something up to me. Some food, perhaps.
You miss her, don't you?
I miss her a lot, but it's manageable. Kind of the story of my relationship life. All good thing. Must eventually come to an end. You brought me food?
Don't eat yet. I have something else for you first.
She said, as she rolled some cigarette papers around a substance. Maybe it will help.
It's Maui Wowie.
She encouraged as she lit it. I took it and inhaled deeply, holding it in as I had learned to do. It's good. I'm already feeling myself turning to stone and craving potato chips.
Remember that night we all smoked together during that big storm, which was actually more of a monsoon, when you went out in the torrential downpour in search of potato chips, jumping over the deep puddles, but missing one and falling in and getting soaked.
You saw that?
Sure, I followed you to know that you were okay, seeing as you were a relatively new smoker of heavy weed.
Thanks.
This is my only vice, Patrick, and it grows wild in Hawaii.
Yes, it does. It is bountiful. And you're ever quite sensible aside from your one vice. A throwback to your hippie days, I suppose.
I have come full circle since then, perhaps even too far, what with my apartment business, but I've saved myself from destruction. I don't own the apartments, I just sublet them. It pays for school.
And afraid to let go in other ways ever since?
No, not anymore. And I have to return to Seattle in June, where I must be responsible to my only surviving parent.
I'll give you what I have, Colleen. I'll be here in a way, making deliveries of computer tapes and who knows what.
Anything will be fine.
For a long time, we cried in each other's arms. The army soldier and the war protester. I still crave some potato chips, since I had been absent-mindedly smoking pot the whole time we'd been talking.
Oh, I forgot. I brought these for you yesterday when I was still afraid to come to you.
Afraid?
Yes, Kimio just left 2 days ago.
But you are certainly here now.
I am with you. I have done it. I'm happy. I am Colleen again.
Welcome back.
And so as a new soldier, you're supposed to be living in the fort all this time?
Yes, I'm single, so I can't live off post. Only E5 and above can, but I'm only E4. And yet I do. And they don't know, for I never registered in the barracks, and so I am here, am I not? It shows what can be done when you have a dream. I even wrote my own name on the list for latrine detail to allay any suspicions as to why it hadn't come up yet.
And here we are, together, taking advantage of good fortune.
We walked slowly back to her room that night, knowing that an eternity could be found in a moment, and that an infinity of moments was to be found in the Hawaiian time that she had left. Because every day mattered. Somewhere far across the sea, people hated and people fought, and people died. What it all really meant, I couldn't really know yet fully, but here, on an island created by a volcano in the Pacific, two people loved, while the scented wind softly blew the curtains at the window where we lay. Do not think that we exerted ourselves too much. We did not, for swimming face down in the water and wearing a mask and propelled by fins was a most effortless activity, and we could easily have swum to Molokai, the next island, visible to the naked eye, it being only about 25 miles away. The fish were of every hue and color, like a living rainbow, and they were everywhere that we looked. We stopped and bought lunch at a little shore stand, paying with wet money, where we listened for a long time to a man playing a flute. Colleen and I were now just an Irish lass and lad driving the sheep out into the green hills as we sat and daydreamed away an hour or so while digested our lunch. We're a long way from home, the old Irish sod.
Home is where you make it.
And every day counts.
We can go to Molokai.
Sure we can. I have 30 days vacation from the army, none of which I've used yet, and I can take any number of those days anytime. However, I'm leaving for Korea in maybe a few weeks or more or less.
And I'll be done with my graduate finals soon. They finish early, but I'm staying until June or July, finishing my paper.
And don't forget Kauai, the Garden Isle, and the Big Island, Hawaii, which still has live volcanoes on it.
We'll go to them all, like honeymooners.
Yes, and we'll spend some money too.
Of course that's what it's for. And besides, we've been scrimping, saving, and starving ourselves, and then feasting at Smorgies Buffet for $3.10.
And you're paying Waikiki rent.
Yes, money really goes fast in Hawaii sometimes.
In Waikiki in 1970 at a flowered park at first with a handsome young man named Patrick with reddish-brown hair and a beautiful young Irish woman named Colleen who has red hair and freckles. Colleen, I've been thinking about how I could live for near free after you leave. IBM doesn't pay me much while I'm gone.
How?
Well, I'm doing it somewhat already. My motorcycle, for example, gets me all around 200 miles per gallon, and a gallon is only 24 cents at the Army gas station. It's easy to park, too. And those delicious chicken parts that we roast on the hibachi, they're only 10 for $1 at the Army commissary, so sometimes we're eating for only 30 cents a day.
Where will you live?
I'm thinking that I can use my motorcycle to ride up a mountain trail to some little spot that no one will know about.
Some Hawaiian natives live up there, the little people.
Yes, but they're friendly. I met some up there behind Fort Shafter one day when I was exploring a trail. It was beautiful up there and so quiet, and I could see the ocean on all sides of the island. I could even see planes landing at the airport without even hearing them.
Take me there, Patrick, and I'll help you scout it out some more.
Good. You're still here for a while. We looked at each other sadly.
Am I ever? But I want to make sure you're all right after I go. That's all I'll say for now, because from here on out, we shall not talk of my leaving.
Looks like my life is meant to be a mosaic of beautiful experiences that come to an end. We'd each cleared as quickly as the Oahu sky clears after one of those famous late afternoon sprinkle events that practically evaporated before hitting the ground. The next day we entered Fort Shafter and headed up its mountain path on my motorcycle. Colleen hugging and holding on snug behind me, holding tighter with every bump and a vibration. Based on her idea, we took the most difficult fork at every opportunity, some very shadowy, so as to ensure that few could ever find the end, and finally, being able to go no further, hid the bike behind a large rock, crossed higher, and walked a short ways, heading down and around a bit, hoping for a surprise there. We came out on a most wonderful ledge that fronted a cave-like indentation, the whole place an underhang that was not visible from above. There we sat and rested on the grass in front of the rock face. We broke out a wad of her special stuff, and we found ourselves still up there the next morning, laying on our big beach towel.
This place already has 3 natural sides, plus most of a roof, and a sleeping bag will keep you warm for starters, and this retreat is nearly invisible, and so not easily found by anyone. We may not even find it again if we don't pay attention on the way out. I can see part of the path way down there. It looks like an ant trail from here.
I'll put a tent in the cave indentation to keep the grime and the bugs away, and I'll bring other things up, piece by piece, whenever I come up. We headed back down on the motorcycle in first gear for its braking drag, carefully noting the way, descending into the valley between 2 mountains, and then rode out of the fort and towards the ocean. Where we'd have brunch at Smorgies with all that you could eat, especially the one we liked behind the Outrigger South right on the beach. We surfed away the day, and fell asleep exhausted that night in Waikiki. Colleen's head and red hair in my chest, the winds from the open window caressing us in our Garden of Eden. In Hawaii in 1970, with a handsome young man named Patrick with reddish-brown hair and a beautiful young Irish woman named Colleen who has red hair and freckles. I had fixed up many more programs for Ben, and then took a week of leave. My delivery trip had been put off a bit. Meanwhile, he'd have people testing the system. It will work, Ben. Great. There were never two people more free than Colleen and I. We sailed to Molokai on our own, in a rented boat, she teaching me how to run a sail, for I had lived a landlocked childhood. Along the way, we saw the great humpback whales spawning, as they did every year. We arrived at the base of the huge green cliffs where there had been a leper colony a long time ago, then rode a mule up to civilization and poked around all the old Western-style towns. By this time, I had become so brown-skinned that I could hardly remember what color white was. We stayed in a first-class hotel, feeling like two bums suddenly turned into royalty. The next day or so, we took a tiny airplane to Maui and climbed the Halakala crater where there were still some steaming vents, and watched the sun-rise, a revered Maui tradition. We saw it from above the clouds. It was almost a religious experience. It was said the demigod, Maui, lassoed the sun and held it prisoner until it agreed to shine on Maui's island every day of the year. And so it did, practically. As luck would have it, a hurricane was passing by the day we were there, very close, but to the south, and high wave forecasts had cleared all the beaches. However, the sun still shone on Maui, just like always. When Colleen saw marijuana growing wild on the hillsides, she almost fainted with ecstasy. Soon recovering, she gathered a few samples. Having already run low of money, we chanced upon someone who, not so strangely as it turned out, was growing pot and mushrooms. And we, having become rather overly social from our days on the Waikiki porch, easily made a friend of him and had him laughing with some of our tales of adventures and misfortunes. And so it was that he invited us to stay there for a few days. It turns out that mushroom farming is indeed a useful business on Maui, and only a few of the mushrooms were of the magic variety, and I'm sure we had some, for there were several days during which we knew not whence we came nor where we went. Another useful occupation in Hawaii was picking macadamia fruits. The reason that macadamia nuts are so expensive is that one. They are so hard to extract. Only one measly nut can be obtained from a fruit the size of a plum, and two, they are so delicious that you just can't stop eating them, and so the demand ever exceeds the supply. So we went a little nuts for a while and had many a mushroom pipe dream. But it was time to return to Oahu. Both of us were rich in love and well steeped with the outer island experiences, for we'd seen two more pearls of the Pacific. I remember strolling the international marketplace that night, looking at treasures from all over the Orient, and noted that we, having not much more than each other, had wished for nothing more. What more did the starry fates have ahead? Some supernovae loves were dead, the other bright lights gone, shining elsewhere. Astronomical events aren't that rare. My trip to South Korea was at hand. I'd be gone for a week or so. Colleen didn't have much time left in Hawaii, but I would have to miss some of it.
Have fun with the Korean girls.
It's like a police state over there.
Free love, kiss someone.
I'll bring one back here.
Great.
You're very magnanimous. In Hawaii in 1970, with a handsome young man named Patrick with reddish-brown hair who was in the Army. Hello, tickets. Lieutenant Dauphiné gave me a pistol and some written instructions along with a wad of cash.
I'm sending Vince as your backup separately. He needs an outing. Enjoy, see the sights.
Is Vince ready for this?
No, but he's been here a while, and so this is just to give him some fun, but he can handle the installation if anything happens to you, which it won't. He's supposed to stay out of sight. That will give him something to concentrate on. He'll think he's back in the Bronx, being ever vigilant.
I arrived at the glorious Honolulu International Air Terminals, noting the little river and waterfalls everywhere. I passed a gate to Papayette, Tahiti, looking at it longingly. We took off over the ocean and lifted high on the way to a landing in Narita near Tokyo, after which I would take a commuter flight to Osaka, stay in a hotel for a night, and then be off to Seoul. At Narita, I showed my Army ID and was whizzed through, and then I found the gate to Osaka. There was a baseball stadium near my hotel in Osaka, and so I took in a game there, noting that the fences were closer in and that some American has-beens were on the teams. I thought I saw Vince across the way, but I couldn't be sure. In Seoul, I had to make it the Army Transient Center before the 11 p.m. curfew, which I didn't know about. Having first taken a very short shelter in a partly open door to a whorehouse when everyone outside had started running around like crazy in the street, I'd had tapes to lug. Vince was probably already in there, hiding out. I wasn't going to look. I looked outside to see the effect of the curfew. Everyone started racing, taxis screamed down the streets, prostitutes made their last propositions, and suddenly the streets were empty and quiet.
Short time or long time?
No time. Where's the Army Transient Center?
It's just next door. You can go out our back to the alley and then go right in their back door.
How convenient. On my way toward the back, I yelled out, "I know you're here, Vince."
I'm not here, Pat.
I went out the back, crossed over, and soon went to sleep to be ready for the next day. Our main fort in Seoul was relatively nearby, so I walked there in the morning. It wasn't the best part of town. The homes of the people were crumbling, and the streets were lined with thousands of persons, bicycles, and carts, producing a sort of bedlam. The smell of waste was ever present, since the sewage runs through the gutters in some parts, where the little children, wearing hardly any clothes, often play or wander unattended. People traveled in all directions, loaded down with bales of hay, cases of beer, cabbage, or just about anything imaginable on the back of a bicycle. No one obeyed the traffic lights. I entered the fort and located the computer center and gave them the tapes, both the supply ones and the intelligence ones. They were Americans. They made a copy and gave me the originals back. Everything worked. They had an RCA computer. I have another delivery to make way down south. I'll be back in a few days or more to see how things are going. Meanwhile, I'll call you. I skipped staying at a hotel, since it was still early, and soon found the train station and boarded an old train to Tagu, some 300 miles to the south, where there was a kind of a backup fort, I supposed, in case the North Koreans ever stormed into Seoul across the nearby dividing line of the DMZ. Which had been and still was a constant specter of tension over the many years since the Korean War. As I rode the train and looked out the window, the poorness of the country sunk deeper into me. The lady of old on my side sang lullabies in an ancient tongue as I waved to the peasants cooking in their little old pots. Such poor people with shutters on their dreams. I couldn't understand very much of what people said on the train, so I took out the computer programs again. Later, I walked up and down through the train, not seeing Vince. He was doing well in his tracking exercise if he was here. Perhaps I'd given him the slip in Seoul. At Taegu, a lot of people got off the train, from all the cars. I couldn't tell if any of them were Vince, far off in the distance. There were a few taxis, but they had taken off while I was busy dragging the tapes along. Beggars followed me. I took an ox cart for a very long way to the fort. There were some Americans in and around the fort, but none in the computer center. The center was predominantly ROK, Republic of Korea. I gave them the supply tapes only. They weren't supposed to get the intelligence tapes. I stood outside the gates of the fort, noting camouflaged planes and tanks nearby, just behind a fence right next to the road, easily spotted from the ground. Where was Vince? In the town, there were the usual assemblage of places that always sprung up near a military base. I was still rolling the tapes around in an ordinary-looking luggage bag, which also contained my clothes. It was a cool night and a bit foggy, but a full moon shone through. It looked scary, as it did on the Korean postcards I'd seen. I went into a tailor shop and got measured for a light leather jacket, bluish black, with a blue collar. It would be ready by late afternoon the next day. I'll be back tomorrow to pick it up, just in time for the next cool night. I walked back outside and looked around. There were still the open sewer trenches all about, for garbage, and for people doing their personal business, which they did in plain sight. I didn't know what smelled worse, the trenches or the stuffed cabbage, Korea's favorite dish.
Short time or long time?
Dinner time, for who knew what diseases the girls in there had.
We have food.
I sat down in the front, the restaurant room, which was nicely decorated, and looked at a menu that I couldn't read. There were a few Korean soldiers eating and talking there. I couldn't decipher a thing they said. I hadn't really been able to talk to anyone for the last 2 days. I took out a magazine I'd picked up on the jumbo jet out of Hawaii and was going to page through it. Nothing was going to drop out of the sky onto me around here, not even a good place to sleep, which all the more meant that it would. And then it came. I heard behind me from a young woman, an American Korean in perfect English, but with a slight Oriental accent.
Good evening, sir. We have roast beef, steaks, hamburgers, and more American fare, as well as delicious Korean dishes. And I've been waiting for you.
I'm your miracle man, not really knowing what I was signing up for, but just to go along with the air of mystery of her waiting for me.
The guy like you didn't come last month.
He's dead. His helicopter was shot down in Vietnam.
Oh my, that's terrible. He said he thought he could help me when I turned 18, but I don't know if he meant it.
When is your birthday?
In 2 days.
We'll talk. I gave her my dinner order and she took it to the kitchen, and then she had to wait on the only other table. It was probably getting near closing time. Some others came in with the advertising girl from outside, and they headed down a hallway. I went over and looked, making sure to bring my precious luggage. The walls of the cubicle-like rooms didn't reach up to the ceiling, and I could hear and imagine everything that was going on. Vince, I know where you are. No use staying quiet. I'm here, Pat, but I'm kind of busy right now. Okay, carry on, I won't tell. In South Korea, in 1970, with a handsome young army man named Patrick with reddish-brown hair and a Korean-American young woman with round eyes. She a blend, but looking more American than Korean, being the waitress. My steak had arrived, but the waitress had to attend to another new table. I was so hungry that I was willing to stay and get trapped in here, for it was already 10:30. I finished my meal and then ordered dessert. It was now 11:01, and I could hear the curfew orders being called outside. Hello?
I'm sorry I got busy and that I may have worried you. You must be wondering.
Let me guess.
Okay, this should be interesting.
You want to get out of this place, out of the country even, because they don't accept you here, because of your round eyes and your other mixed features, as well as your good English. They considering you not to be pure Korean. They shunned you in the Korean school and in Korean society. So you switched or were switched to the American school in the fort, learning English there, and gaining some American and foreign friends, with whose help you bettered your English even more, which, while useful, made you stand out all the more here. Plus, well, you have larger, American-sized breasts from your father's side, the GI who engaged your mother as a prostitute here some 19 years ago. You're tall, for here as well.
Perfect. And I've already graduated school. Are you a spy or something?
No, well, maybe you?
No. I nose around, not much else to do.
You don't like Korea, but you bear it well, and by the way, you look pretty nice.
Thanks, but of course they don't think so here. To them, I'm an ugly outcast, having round eyes, but they have to think that way.
True, but you are still well adjusted, given your turmoils, but you don't want to have to work the back rooms when you reach 18 or whatever age decides it perhaps being possible at a younger age, but your English-speaking ability delayed it or something else, but the time is drawing nigh, I can tell by your anxiety.
Hear you every word. You're good and you work in intelligence, just like the last guy.
Well, sort of, and I may soon be working there. I'm rather new, but I know someone there who is good at everything, and he's a friend.
So you can call up your cohort?
The word cohort floored me, and I could only say good word cohort.
The Assyrians came down like wolves from the fold, their cohorts gleaming in purple and gold.
I know that one well.
It's an army poem.
Yeah, it would be in the army school here.
Oh, and my mother runs this place, and she does want me to work the back rooms. I have to get out of here.
And your father is long gone, but he was an American in the Korean War about 19 years ago.
Yes, and I have a stepfather now. He's a farmer. I've even considered running away, but I'd rather not get into that position in this country. I need to try to do it right. I'm getting desperate. I've already made some moves towards getting away.
Such as?
I snuck my birth certificate away, and when I traveled to Seoul a while back, on the pretense of visiting my relatives there, which I also did, I applied for a green card. I called the embassy a while back, and they said it takes time, plus I had to be 18, which I nearly am now. 2 days.
Good move. You're a gem in the wild here. I must be dreaming. The fates ever play around with me. They're always up to something. What else?
I think you have to buy me in order for me to...
What else?
I think you have to buy me in order for me to be able to leave the country. I also have the truck and people photos that your predecessor asked me to take.
Now I was really floored, for I hadn't imagined this buying thing. But then again, here I was in a third world country, and in an older and more remote part of it. Well, what if I told you that I could take you to a place where there was no prejudice against foreigners, where all shapes of eyes were considered beautiful, where cultures mixed, where intermarriage was not unusual but even common?
I'll go and you won't be sorry.
We were both still sort of lost in time and space, worlds apart, but at least the touching of our cultures had begun. Her face broke into a lovely smile. You would even be considered beautiful in America, for you look both American and Oriental. You are a perfect blend. You got the best from your father and mother.
You care, don't you? I'm so happy you came out of nowhere.
This was no longer a time for words. I met her eyes in a glance of wonder and feelings that could not lie. Do you have a phone? I have to call Hawaii and check in anyway soon, although I'm kind of a day ahead in my work, so I might as well call now and see what we can do.
So you will help me?
Yeah, for sure. I already thought about it, and it's the right thing to do. The green card thing has to get going. Foreign nationals from certain places can't get in, even with a temporary visa, and they have quotas too. You're also a beautiful enigma. She led me upstairs saying,
My mother is out for the night.
With your stepfather?
No, with someone else.
I had to relay the call through the army base in Seoul. It rang a few times, then I heard,
Lieutenant Dauphiné speaking.
it's DA-43.
Howdy, Patrick. How's it going? Glad you called. We almost had you going on to Okinawa next, but that's been delayed.
The tapes are operational, no problems encountered. They're happy in both ports.
Good. I told Vince to try to steal the tapes from you as another fun thing to draw attention to keeping them secure.
I kept them in sight at all times, and so I still have them, even here at the phone.
Great, and that's a good thing to get used to doing. Seen Vince?
No, but I heard his voice once from afar. I guess he's having fun.
Good. You're calling a day early, so something else must be up.
I have a puzzle for you, and maybe it's even half solved.
Good, I like puzzles.
In South Korea, in 1970, with a handsome young army man named Patrick with reddish-brown hair, talking to Lieutenant Dauphiné on the phone, who is in Hawaii, about a Korean-American young woman with round eyes. She, a blend but looking more American than Korean. In short, a near 18-year-old female Amerasian product of the Korean War, 2 days to her birthday, has already applied for a green card using her birth certificate at our embassy in Seoul to escape having to work in a house of ill repute run by her mother just outside the fort near Tagu. Says she has the photos that DA-42 asked her to take, and she's some sort of genius.
You've got heart, Patrick. You could have turned her down. Is she listening?
No, she's watching out the window.
I didn't know about the photo assignment, and I didn't know about the contact girl. I guess DA-42 died before he could tell me. Anyway, good. I'll have Mr. Miller at the embassy in Seoul expedite her green card application, which will be all legit and on the up and up, for she was born after January 1st, 1952, and looks obviously Amerasian.
Yes, I skipped 2 hotels already, including tonight. I may have to sleep in a chair. The curfew time passed.
Good. That's it then, and it helps the process. Okay, you are, unfortunately, in a very backward area. Getting into the U.S. with a green card will relatively easy due to my connections, but getting out of Korea, in her case, requires you to own her. Thus, her stepfather signing her over to you. Any old piece of paper with a signature, address, and date will do.
She's the waitress here, and so I suppose she encounters just about everyone around eventually. And she looks out the window a lot and takes pictures.
Those must be what the photos are of, Chinese people and perhaps of some suspicious street traffic. We'll have to figure it out later. Sometimes these things pan out and sometimes they don't. Oh, and there's one more thing. That's right. Owning a female by a young adult non-related male is considered to be even higher than marriage, and so it includes it.
What?
Don't worry. That validity only applies in Korea. She may give it more importance, though.
Wow. Guess I can't get married again in Korea.
Right. And give the tapes to Vince and tell him to return if it's a go, so then she can have their seat on the planes. I don't have any other stops to add for you. Next time, though, or the time after, we may have a lot in a month or two. Aloha.
Aloha. In South Korea, in 1970, with a handsome young army man named Patrick with reddish-brown hair and a Korean-American young woman with round eyes, she being a blend but looking more American than Korean. Anything out there?
No, but sometimes there are ordinary trucks going by after the curfew, but only about once in a month or two. Strange.
Shall we go to see your stepfather tomorrow, early?
Yeah, I'm off until mid-afternoon and he's dying to sell me. You're going to own me for life.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are. You are taking a big chance on me and for me. I could sense that the other guy wasn't going to do that.
You're so on the ball that you rolled me over.
But you were going to do it anyway.
Yeah, it seems that my whole life has turned out to be a preparation for helping people out in strange circumstances. And they're always female, beautiful and caring.
We're going to be as married too, besides your owning me.
Only here, I have a girlfriend in Hawaii, and I can't own people as property.
That's fine. I'll be happy to meet her. I'll even pretend that I'm not married or owned.
And I have a girlfriend in Japan and one in New York too. Perhaps that's not what I should have said.
So what's one more?
You're pretty sharp to have become like you are in this far-off place. This is really quite a rare happening.
Yeah, I am, and it did happen.
You seem like some sort of a spy who was planted here, but that's not possible, is it?
I feel like one, but I wasn't a plant.
Yeah, the lieutenant would have known about it.
What now?
I don't have anywhere to sleep, my dear.
I'll take you to an empty, clean room. You don't even have to kick a girl out. This whole place is a hazard to everyone's health.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Will I like Hawaii?
You'll love it. It's much a worldly oriental mixture, and there are many countries' blends there, such as yourself. There's no shunning, all is friendliness. I gave her the magazine from my back pocket so she could look at the Hawaiian scenes and people.
Good night, husband.
Good night, dear, not wife. I rolled the tapes over to the far side of my bed, and soon I could hear soft and enchanting flute music playing somewhere. That's a great touch, Fates. Just wonderful. In a while, she came over and gave me a light kiss on the lips, saying,
"Thank you so much,"
and left. In the morning, we slipped off, before her mother's return, and got a taxi to take us to her stepfather's farm. She explained to her stepfather that I wanted to buy her, and I'll be darned if the guy didn't quickly agree, saying that it had to be $200. I gave him $300 and he beamed so wide that I thought he was going to hug me, and then he did. She wrote up the papers, and he signed.
Easy, huh?
Yeah, I've never seen things go so quickly in all my life. We even have time to go to Busan now. Things are really moving along.
And we're married now.
Only here.
Well, we are here.
And I'm 5 years older than you.
So what? We're both young. I owe you for life.
We don't even really know each other.
We do a little, and I'm sure that we will more. The sounds are good.
Sounds? You mean the vibrations?
Yes.
The trip took an hour there and an hour back, plus 10 minutes to put the ownership papers through and obtain a document. Simple. This is going so fast that we even almost have to wait for your birthday to come tomorrow.
We're right on time. I'll pack today and we'll be off to Seoul on the train in the morning, and then we'll go right to the embassy with time to spare.
I'll book our flights through the Army post and any changes or hotels along the way on my special card. We'll stay in Guam for a while to celebrate. I'm supposed to tour and have fun, living and loving according to my cohort Colleen in Hawaii.
It's a world record engagement and marriage.
We're not married.
We are here. And I'm a virgin, so don't worry. I didn't want to go out with the Koreans, and they didn't want to go out with me. The Americans liked me and wanted to rent me, but I don't rent. So that's why I am Purity.
You can stay that way. I'm too old for you, and too new. You're caught up in the moment, as like in a romantic adventure movie.
It's better because it's real. Am I not old and mature in the way I present myself?
I'm afraid I have to say, yes. You also seem quite worldly, which is an oddity that I haven't quite figured out yet. Or it's just how you are. But a part of you is still stuck to the ownership custom thing, and that's a really outdated, olden days idea. Women are no longer chattel.
Cattle?
Close, but no chattel, as in personal possession.
I'll work on not being owned so much.
I unown you.
We'll see about that. I've dreamt of this day. We'll still need to consummate.
Oh, fates. I bet you're rolling around the floor laughing at me, hesitating to deflower my virgin wife on her marriage night.
You're talking to the fates?
Yeah, like to the stars.
I usually talk to the moon.
Great. Hey, hold on a minute. I have to get rid of these tapes. I wheeled the tapes into the hallway and attached a note about Vince returning to Hawaii with the tapes. Vince, you there? Vince? I'll be right back. I have to go to the bathroom. No answer. I waited a while, hiding out of sight. Vince dashed out and stole the tapes. And then he read the note. In South Korea in 1970, with a handsome young army man named Patrick with reddish-brown hair and a Korean-American young woman with round eyes, she being a blend but looking more American than Korean. Time to get ready, dear. She packed a suitcase, hid it in the empty room, and then she waited on the tables, just as if it were a regular day. Let's go to sleep, my not new wife and my not property. We have a big day tomorrow.
Okay, maybe. I admit that I'm love-starved, though.
I stripped down to my underwear and got under the covers. She did the same. We lay there and looked at each other. We soon hugged and kissed in the near dark. Emotions stirred in me, and I could tell they had in her.
I'm changing my name.
Good, I have trouble pronouncing it. What's your new name?
Cho.
That sounds Chinese.
It's from chosen. I've been chosen.
By me?
Yes, by you, and I need more kisses.
They were intense. Good night, Cho. We can get to know each other more in Guam. It's kind of been all business so far, but we need to close it out to be sure of it.
Haha, or now.
We can fall asleep holding each other.
We can sleep on the train tomorrow. I'm too excited to sleep now. I know you're, well, like trying to be businesslike, army-like, and as a big brother protecting me.
You're under 18.
No, it's after midnight, so I was just born, technically.
Outsmarted. Again, I'm not sure I know how to initiate a virgin.
Yes, you do. You know a lot. Be slow and gentle.
Well, I was going to be anyway. Unlike those in the rest of the rooms around here. It's going to make us feel very close, though, for now. And in the future, I'm spoken for, at least temporarily for a while. Remember? My girlfriend in Hawaii.
And the others too. How about short time?
Short can become long.
Try short in case my body cannot yet take long.
She took the rest of her clothes off, and mine too. It was only now that mattered. We put ourselves into action with both body and heart. Mind and soul would have to wait until we knew each other better. We made love to the Korean flute music that was wafting in through the window. It washed over us and ran softly through our bodies. There soon came an understanding. Two people of the world began to see other for what they were, not just for what they appeared to be. She played the yin and I played the yang. Our circles would soon intersect and all the more link as we each merged deeper into the other. Night had touched the garment of day, and the day had given a twilight kiss to the night. Short had become long. A censor came by and erased my further descriptions above. We got up early and made the train and somehow slept in it. We got off and walked through the gates of Seoul for a hearty meal of kimchi and salmon to carry us through the afternoon. We passed the shrine of 1,000 Buddhas. Everything went well in emigration, and we soon left Korean airspace. The 8th Army remained behind to guard the country from itself and the hands of fools, and now the hills of Japan had come into view, for we'd slept some more on the flight. In Tokyo, one could hardly see the rising sun through the shroud of smoke that blanketed the city. There were people in every nook and cranny between all the factories and electric billboards. The pretty young girls sported their gaily colored skirts and their bright red lipstick. The vehicles even drove on the right-hand side of the road, like in England, not at all a well-known fact to me. So much for my plan to divert to see Kimio. We caught a flight for Guam with several obviously honeymooning couples. We breezed through customs and immigration. Talk about life in the fast lane, a world record indeed. We went straight to our hotel. Though somewhat confusing at first, the site of our life and love would eventually become clear. As we lay awake for a while that night, there was intrigue in the air, and the beating of wild hearts played rhythm for the music of our plight in the midst of the strangeness of the situation. Relaxing in the arms of Cho, I felt so nameless, yet somehow so human, now far away from the ancient land of the yin and the yang, yet still whirling in its revolving symbol. Our lovemaking went all too well, as exotically erotic. We went out to the beach the next day. Here was the Pacific Ocean, the sea that was a mother to all Polynesia. There we lie on the sand, listening to the hypnotic crashing of life's never-ending waves, watching the rising sun setting on the other side of our minds. We had left the earth as in a dream. We floated away, we flew high, low, and underwater. She took me far beneath the coral sea, from Saipan to Bali High, from Paradise Pacifica to Atlantis and beyond, to the shades of Avalon, then back to Bora Bora and Tahiti. We swam some more far beneath the enchanted sea. It was wet and mild like a cleansing shower. Soon we were witness to all of the winged hours that time empower. Then we saw a lady sitting on a throne, though disembodied. She was a living spirit and spoke to us softly and sweetly. You have found me. You have found love. Day was now nearly done. We looked out onto sea. The ocean was imbued with a heavy tint of gold, sort of a brassy gold. Boats and piers creaked, and ships' bells were jostled into ringing. Such days can never be too long. Dessert was guavas, and the nighttime was delicious. Soon the twilight flute music recalled the Korean tune of centuries past as it filled and haunted my mind, a mind which had never heard, but its music was not in my mind. It was real, and it was coming from Cho's flute. In 1970, with a handsome young army man named Patrick with reddish-brown hair and a Korean-American young woman named Cho with round eyes, she being a blend but looking more American than Korean, and a beautiful young Irish woman named Colleen, who has red hair and freckles. Look to the night sky. The Southern Cross could be seen about 6 degrees above the southern horizon, and there, rising on the northern horizon, was the North Star. We had reached the crossroads of north and south. I had come from the west and she from the east. The twain had met, although author Mark Twain had thought it never would. We had stayed a week in Guam, now signed, sealed, and delivered by the fates. It was the universe's idea, as with everything else.
Onward, owner and husband, to the great archipelago of Hawaii.
Are you sure you want to be so tied down at a young age?
Tie me down and tie me up. You saved me. I am yours forever. Guaranteed, no matter where you are or where you end up or with whom.
The universe did it.
I'm according it to you.
We flew into Honolulu the next day, walking in as if we owned the place. We gazed in wonder up at the mountains shrouded in mist. The air was filled with the scents of plumeria, ginger, jasmine, orchids, birds of paradise, and hibiscus. We looked up to the mountains where the fern jungles and the bamboo forests grew, where the good luck tiki gods resided, where the Garden of Eden was surely located. Cho was as a child in a candy shop. Hawaii was 3 times better than Guam by climate, size, and wonders. I had 4 girlfriends now, and 2 were in Hawaii. This live and love thing had gotten out of hand. Being in Hawaii and in foreign lands was like pouring gasoline onto an already flaming passion. A reckoning was now at hand, perhaps. We went to Colleen's, and Colleen gave me wild hugs and kisses while Cho stood back.
Who's this wonderful creature?
So happy to meet you, Colleen. Patrick told me how he loves you so much. I'm so happy for you two. I have intelligence for the army. They asked Patrick to bring me back, plus I just had to get out of Korea too. It's a miracle of a happening.
Well, I predicted it. I told him to bring a Korean girl here.
I'm a half-breed, although I look more American than Korean.
Well, then this is the place for you. Need a room?
Yeah.
You can have Patrick's old porch room. We're both in mine.
So Cho was going to cover for me. Well, I'd have to tell the truth to Colleen. Cho went in to see the porch room. Colleen, I'll tell you the whole story later. I own her now by old Korean law, for I had to purchase her from her father, and, well, while that's only for over there, it's a near unbelievable tale all around, and the ownership thing includes marriage.
Don't worry about it, Patrick. I hope you made love to her.
I did?
That's wonderful, I mean it.
Free love?
Free as the wind.
But you don't do that here.
No, not now so much. But I'll have to find someone or two in Seattle. I know better what to look for now.
Wow, that was too easy.
It's the least I can do for my entering into a romance with you that I knew I'd have to leave. Plus, I rode into it on Kimiyo's skirt tails.
We were headed together anyway, Colleen.
I know, and it's fabulous. Sorry that it's been so short.
I went in to see Cho and said, Colleen accepts our love relationship wholeheartedly. You were honoring her as you'd promised. And now she's upped that and is honoring you back.
What a rare and gracious lady.
Yeah, I'm doubly blessed for a little while.
And I am triply, for I have you, her, and Hawaii. Before that, I had not much.
We went back out and Colleen called us over and embraced us both at the same time, saying,
We are all one now, at least for a while, until I have to go home.
In 1970, in Oahu, with a handsome young army man named Patrick with reddish-brown hair and a Korean-American young woman named Cho with round eyes. Cho Ling snuggled onto the back of my motorcycle, such as the day might become one with the night at twilight, or as when the moon kisses the sun during an eclipse, or as a soul might meet another soul when the intersecting and closing circles of me and thee conjunct and merge to form the yin and the yang of love in the union of two merged inseparable selves like Adam and Eve, each containing the key to the other's self. We rode into Fort Shafter and went over to CSCPAC to see Lieutenant Dauphinais. Lieutenant Cho is here. He interviewed Cho for some time while I caught up on some things from Ben and from Lena, who ran the intelligence side of the programming. I saw Vince sitting at his desk smiling.
I'm giving her a weekly allowance for 12 months, and I hear she has a place with Colleen in Waikiki for now. I'm also sending another CID agent undercover operative to the fort in Tago, as I already sent one just a month ago based on nothing more than a hunch, and then we'll find out more about what's going on with the Chinese there. Some of our more sensitive equipment may be going off to China, sailing across the sea right there just a few hundred miles away. Cho's truck photos are of vehicles from a seaport, and she has Chinese customers on the same nights. This kind of thing happened in Vietnam too, and we stopped it. I suppose they've moved on to try it in South Korea, but that fort is only second tier. Nevertheless, we don't need the Chinese getting a foot in the door. One of the operatives is going to have to follow the trucks somehow, or even hide inside it due to the scarcity of traffic at night, but I don't think it will come to that. Well, this was a lucky find indeed.
Good hunch, Lieutenant.
Routine. You should see what the general does.
Dare I ask?
He's in Cambodia with the special forces you saw at the airport. One last, long effort before the war winds down.
Cripes!
Yeah, double cripes. We're not supposed to be in there.
Holy moly.
Our general has heart.
How long has this been going on?
For quite some time. Nixon knows, so we're covered.
But Nixon isn't.
True, man. The buck stops there.
Truman?
Yeah.
We returned to Colleen's and went out to dinner, eating outdoors near the ocean to celebrate. I had entered some kind of uncharted forest of double love. Some tourists gave us a strange look.
To us. To the east and the west, united by Patrick and to the good old Army intelligence.
We all kissed, even Colleen and Cho. More tourists stared.
We each love Patrick, so let us both keep on loving Patrick.
The moon rose over Waikiki, it seeming to rise right out of Diamond Head Crater. We breathed deep the scented air. Every breath was fresh and full of life. We returned, much later, to Colleen's. It was Friday night, and so we would be free all weekend. Needless to say, we all squeezed into Colleen's bed, later automatically, without having discussed it. Things happened, which words for I have lost. Sorry, readers. Then Colleen fell asleep, and Cho went to the porch, waving me after. Guess I'd be dividing my time. We all slept in. Cho had woken me up earlier and had sent me over to sleep with Colleen and wake her up. The Fates had recovered, but they weren't done fooling around with me, but it worked out okay. Alice Wong came over with a PL1 computer program that had a problem, telling us as much in her not-so-good English. I'd given her my address. We all gathered around the printout while having breakfast at lunchtime. These are my girlfriends, Alice.
I not allow boyfriend in China. All live one house.
And so you just put it out of your mind?
Why not?
Chinese tradition, marriage arranged. I marry once, but he mean. I come Hawaii by Hong Kong, Uncle Pullstring.
One only needs to create subroutines for storing and retrieving data, and for a few other common functions like sorting. Therefore, most any program could be created out of these few prime constituents.
Fan Kung La, thank you too much.
Alice next brought out a COBOL program. I called Vince at the fort to come over. He knew that language well. The next thing we did was to work on Alice's broken English, which actually only had but two simple faults: omission of pronouns and articles, and not adding an S to verbs in the third person present singular. Later, Vince and Alice passed out on the couch together. I walked by them during the night. Situation solved. In 1970 in Oahu, with a handsome young army man named Patrick with reddish-brown hair and a beautiful Japanese young woman named Kimio. On Monday, I went into work at Fort Shafter. In the afternoon, the lieutenant came over. Aloha, sir.
How's your marriage going?
He stepped back, smiling, as if I might swat him with a printout. My girlfriend likes my wife, and vice versa.
That's a good one.
It's true, and they live in the same place, too. It's wonderful, actually.
You're going to have to start taking a lot of vitamins.
That's for sure.
We need you to take some tapes to Okinawa in a few weeks. That will give you a break. See the sights there and in Japan proper.
A-okay.
It should be routine. Know any girls in Japan?
Yes.
When did this happen?
When Sarge gave me 2 weeks off.
Cripes.
She has an older sister, Lieutenant.
I have a girl here who is even relatively nearby, but you and everyone won't be able to figure out who she is.
Okay, but I'm not going to try.
She's a real sweetheart. We'll probably get engaged soon.
Congratulations. The lieutenant had probably thrown in the word relatively to throw me off, but it wouldn't be polite to go nosing around. I worked on computer programs for the next 3 weeks. After work, I began bringing pieces of things up the mountain, a few at a time, towards completing a mountain retreat. I had brought up the tent, a small grill, and a wide cot, along with sheets and pillows, and a few other assorted items, such as cookware, a lantern, and some waterproof bags. The tent was the toughest thing to bring up. It tilted upward, with one end tied to the back of the motorcycle, and the other end dragging along while I had to be sure not stall out. In a few weeks I left for Okinawa and the Philippines too, which they had added on, and it was really too damn hot in Manila. Oh, Olongapo, flesh pot of fertile flora, Pinatubo reseals your box Pandora, fiery ash freezes your beauty in time, a poem in stone like Sodom and Gomorrah. I then dropped in on Kimio for a week, on the large island of Kyushu, and met her friends and family. I thought I owed her that much, and told her I'd come by every so often, hopefully. I also reminded her that I was stuck in the army, and might have to go on dangerous missions, and so she should live and love too.
We need you here, Kimio, and we need help with the apartments. Patrick is in the army, and after that he has to go to work in New York. Real life is not like a vacation in Hawaii.
In love it is.
Fukuoka had it all, from castles to parks to ocean beaches, and across those waters, not really very far off, was Busan, Korea, a place that neither Cho nor I ever wished to go back to or hear of. Upon the jet's approach, back toward Honolulu, I could see all the Hawaiian islands, stranded like pearls of an open necklace on a blue sapphire sea. I got back to work on the computer programs and to finishing the mountain retreat. I was always an outdoors type of person anyway. Life would be great up there, the dream of a lifetime. Colleen's time to go had arrived. Cho and I bid her a very fond farewell, holding a dinner party for her and her friends. We'd have to move out of our apartment. We'd already checked around Waikiki, and the available places about were all too expensive. It was tourist season. I'd been lucky the first time around, with Colleen's place, plus her generosity. Cho and I went to the lifeguard stand and sat a while. We would both miss Colleen, the giver of all givers. We smoked the last of Colleen's pot in her honor. We went back to the apartment and gathered up our things. I told Cho that she was in for a big surprise. Here we go, Cho. Cho and I packed the motorcycle bags and rode off. Flute music drew us ever onward and upward, ever enchanting. We rode for about 7 miles from Waikiki. There was no more east and west, nor north or south. There was no direction. The world had shrunk to the point from which love emanated. We passed through the gate of Fort Shafter and I clicked the shifter into low gear. We headed up the mountain trail towards our new home. I hadn't told Cho about the mountaintop camp and its scenic view, for I didn't want to lessen by anticipation her first and glorious impression of it. On the near tortuous way up and up there was only the dense and lush vegetation and forest to be seen, with even the trail itself steep and faint at times, although near an edge toward the top, where glimpses of the Licky Highway could be seen far below. Then the vista revealed itself.
Wow, I've never been this high, Patrick.
And it's not from pot, we're up near heaven.
It's fantastic. I can see forever. Good temperature and air, too. No one knows how to get up here?
To keep a secret, tell no one.
It's so beautiful. It's near unbelievable. I'm a happy shock.
It's for us, our new home.
Thank you, Patrick. I'm speechless for once.
It's just us, Cho, from here on.
I'm yours completely and lovingly, but you're free to have someone older.
No buts. You own my heart.
You have only 3 girlfriends now, Patrick.
Well, not even 2 really, for it's not like I can go live in Japan.
I'm moving up fast.
And I haven't heard from Patty in New York for a while. She's probably afraid to tell me that she had to get married to satisfy her parents' wishes of arrangement.
That's wonderful. I'm way more than happy. I'll skip the buts, but just for now. Oops, I almost said something.
I'm happy too.
This place and its view is so beautiful that it's startling.
In 1970, in Oahu, up at the rustic retreat on the mountain next to Fort Shafter, with a handsome young army man named Patrick with reddish-brown hair, and a Korean-American young woman named Cho with round eyes. It's magical, entrancing, spellbinding, bewitching, beguiling, fascinating, captivating, alluring, enthralling, charming, attractive, lovely, delightful, beautiful, dreamy, heavenly, divine, and gorgeous.
Are you reading from a thesaurus?
Yes.
They don't have enough words for this. And no one noticed you building it?
I smuggled it up and in, piece by piece. The idea came to me in a pipe dream, and now it even looks like one.
This is a dream, Patrick. You own me doubly now.
No owning. My love is unconditional. I had a gas lamp inside the tent in the 3-sided indentation that was the cave heart of my mountain camp retreat, the front being open, with overhanging branches above the tent's front screen doors, and further. The air circulated well around the tent, and any rainwater ran downward and off of the cliff. Cho was delighted to see my bookshelf and picked out a Sherlock Holmes tale and set it aside. She was surely overqualified for her old job in the restaurant, and had also ever considered herself as more American than Korean. She would make it here just fine. There was no finer thing that the fates had ever done. A double cot, nestled against the back wall. The tent was large enough for us to stand up in and walk around. Outside, on the lawn, there was a gas grill, a table and chairs, 2 light loungers, and the motorcycle, as not much else was required. We had simple but very cozy living conditions here in the scented air above Fort Shafter, with the city and the Honolulu airport with its reef runway way off in the distance. That night we looked up at the stars amid the blackness. The scary Korean moon was long gone. Cho lay in my arms that night high atop the Kulao mountain range. It was then, with Cho, that the Orient captured me forever, with its heartfelt simplicity, with its Eastern, less hectic way at looking at life, the deeper caring for all things and all the mystique of the Eastern philosophy. It was then that I was transformed into the egg, white on the outside, but oriental yellow on the inside, and it was an awakening that was to last throughout my life. In 1970, in Oahu, up at the rustic retreat on the mountain next to Fort Shafter, with a handsome young army man named Patrick with reddish-brown hair, and a Korean-American young woman named Cho with round eyes. Here we are as stardust looking at the stars.
We learned the names of the stars during the nights up there in our mountain camp, and I was surprised to find out that the Big Dipper was called the Great Plough in the Orient. In this way, we also learned about the dragon's head, the snake, the monkey, and the rat. There, a shooting star. Quick, the doorway to heaven is open for just a second. Make a wish.
And so I wished for Cho to have a good life, with or without me.
Look, there's the coal sack rising from the sea, and the pole star has not yet set. That's the best luck that can happen to anyone, to see both at the same time, according to old legend, and it means that life will be long and prosperous.
I looked at her lying there on the blanket, her dark brownish hair blending into the shadows, the peace of her smile, the wonder in her eyes, the absolute sincerity of her heart. How do you know the sky?
It was dark where I first grew up. Each house had only one light bulb for the year. Look, there's the grand warrior with his sword fighting the giant water buffalo to save the emperor.
To me, that's Orion the hunter fighting Taurus the bull. Our camp was looking pretty good these days, and it now had more of a front roof of some more branches, a hibachi, a writing table, and a hurricane lamp. On the days when it rained heavily, we'd pull down a canopy on the front of the tent, and when the really severe storms came, we'd hibernate, hope, and be brave. We lived, loved, talked, and traveled around for many a day, at least on weekends or when I wasn't working, ever returning in the evening to the enchanted place. We got on to discussing everything, even wars and politics, and concluded that it was usually North against South in the many civil wars within countries, although there were some almost seeming East versus West cases, but these came from without rather than within, such as in the East-West division of Germany. Out of the blue, I asked her the origin of the words news, and she understandably replied that it was news, the letters for north, east, west, and south that could be seen on a weather vane from a certain direction. I knew then that there were some fine old books in the library of the fort in Korea. We came to the subject of meaning, happiness, and completion in one's life, and she again astounded me with her insight.
It is not about one's individual pursuits that does it all, but the relations and connections. And it is certainly not about an unlived or solitary life. for that kind of life is worthless and ultimately not satisfying, although some of that is necessary at times to support one's entire and glorious endeavor.
And what would be the one summation in its highest form, although still the same motivation in all of its forms?
It is to be as close to another as one can ever be, as suitable, of course, whether as friend, helper, or life partner. For it is this otherness that completes and joys the individual self into happiness, meaning, and fulfillment.
She knew that one could not be a self all alone, that others brought forth and defined a fair portion of one's self and being.
And this is why we are together.
The breezes swept over us at night as we slept on the wide cot at the back of the cliff cave, which was even in a nook, somewhat, by a tent extension that opened. This retreat was one of the things that made us akin with nature in this land, which was as open and free as the people in it. Warmth in climate begat warmth in human outlooks all the more. Other places could never be quite as Hawaii was. Cho was an all-in-one, meaning everything in one person, a rare find, such as in she being learned yet also aware, wildly adventurous, friendly, and romantic. The odds of us having run into each other were astronomical. I gave her a puzzle that was not in any of the Sherlock tales. A man receives a neat and handwritten but unsigned letter in the mail. Meanwhile, I gave her an easier puzzle of a similar nature.
The second one is easy, but I will have to think some more about the first case.
Closeness and consideration of a partner is key in the rise and continuance of synergy and love in a relationship. Yet all comes rather naturally when one is as close to another as can be, when that relationship is true. The origin of the universe and then life is the ultimate detective story. I had helped the Army finish the development of software that could track movement. The enemy carried long metal objects known as rifles and shorter ones known as pistols. In 1970, in Oahu, up at the rustic retreat on the mountain next to Fort Shafter, with a handsome young Army man named Patrick with reddish-brown hair, and a Korean-American young woman named Cho with round eyes. The motorcycle churns the dirt of the trail, its first gear pulling us up and up through twists and turns, over roots and rocks, towards the camp retreat. In late afternoon, raising up the sun a bit, or sometimes even at night, raising up the stars, with our water and goods in the saddlebags. Here the tent and cabin, the soft moving airs and the lightness of being, then later on the soft pillows of sleep into the dawn below the shooting stars. Existence ever trumps essence. Here today, gone to Maui. Twilight, dawn, or dusk are the still points of the noise, the day-night neither here nor there, but in equipoise. As the motorcycle races down the Pali Highway at 90 miles per hour, the ultimate symphony begins to play. As emotions in the state of being, misadventure rides on the back. We then crossed the deep blue ocean aboard the ferry to Maui. We had come upon the pot plantation on Maui, whose owners I had known from a previous excursion. Jake and Jill resided on the hazy boundary of legal and not, but we would keep their secret. We next took a ferry to Kauai, a rare destination. It's a quiet island, one good for honeymooners and sightseeing, containing the legendary Bali High and the Waimea Canyon. which is lined by a cliff road that was not much of a road at all, and there was no fence or railing. We were tucked against the Nepali cliffs in this Haina State Park. Haina is usually translated as red hot. When the sun is down on the right side of the Nepali cliffs, the scene turns to a deep and perfect red, and this is where many couples have envisioned a beach wedding. The 230-acre park is situated at the terminus of the North Shore Drive and is host to Lumahai Beach, Haina Beach, Ke'i Beach, and a spectacular 1,280 feet cliff named Bali High. The cliff and these beaches have also been the locations for several well-known songs and movies, as in the film almost titled Bali High, set in the South Pacific and then given that name. One mile to the east is Lumahai Beach, which is actually 3 beaches in various degrees of connectedness depending on how the sand builds up. It is visually stunning with black lava cliffs, white sand, blue ocean, and green jungle. It's always great for running on the soft sand, then swimming in the fresh water of the mouth of Lumahai River, and playing in the waves where the river meets the ocean. When I was 7 years old, my mother had taken me to see the movie South Pacific, and somehow that had steered me to Hawaii, and now here I was, at Bali High. It had glued onto me across the years. On our way back inland, amid the endless sugarcane fields, we came upon yet another tin shack, among so many, but this time we stopped and gave them some goodies, and talked and stayed into the night with this Filipino couple. They knew the names of the stars and that therein hydrogen was being converted to helium, and that was why the stars shone. In the quiet of the night, we could hear the waterfalls rushing, way off in the distance. On the ferry ride back from Kauai to Honolulu, we could still smell the scents of jasmine and many other flowers in the midst of the open sea. And it was in these types of moments of bodily sensation that we felt most alive. And so we knew, like Walt Whitman, that a life of only the mind would never do, as emotions and feeling arose so much from that which the body does. In 1970, in Oahu, up at the rustic retreat on the mountain next to Fort Shafter, with a handsome young army man named Patrick with reddish-brown hair, and a Korean-American young woman named Cho with round eyes. Here we are. We had returned to the mountain camp, and there Cho gave the answers to the puzzles.
In the second case, when the man goes out to the mailbox to see that someone had predicted the number they would pick over the phone, it is that the call was made from the road right near the mailbox, and the letter with the answer quickly put there as soon as the number was known. The first case is more difficult, in which the answer to the number was already contained there with a smaller envelope, which was, of course, completely sealed and opaque, offering no see-through, which means that the number chosen was a true match. This could only happen to a few people, out of perhaps tens of thousands of letters mailed, each handwritten to indicate a very personal touch and interest, although I'm sure that only a general familiarity was intimated, but nothing really specific.
Yes.
The amazement of the receiver has much to do with what we discussed before, that his self is what seems to matter most in the world, this drawing attention away from the possibility that thousands of handwritten letters could have been sent out. Some had to match the number chosen.
Okay.
If this was the beginning of some shady scheme, then only those so amazed by the number prediction would respond, perhaps to some anonymous P.O. box, wishing to know more, and so the perpetrators could thus compile the hits, perhaps then later calling on the phone to add more confirmation through the mailbox trick in case 2.
The first snow of the season had begun just after midnight and stopped before dawn, there being an incident taking place sometime in between. Boot tracks led to the scene from the plowed road across the lawn and then off into the woods, where they suddenly stopped. There was no hearing of any helicopter or anything like that, possibly dropping a rope down to the person whose boot tracks had just stopped. There also being no road, tree, fence, or any way for the person to have otherwise continued without leaving tracks. Nor could the person have retraced by stepping in the boot tracks, or even have walked backwards to begin with, for the tracks were clearly that of a normal walking pace, and had been stepped in only once, but for the last track in the midst of untrodden snow all around, which seemed as if the person had just stood there a while, shifted his feet. How could tracks just end, as if the person had flown away, which he didn't?
This is even much more information than I need. I'm leaving it up to the readers. The old times are still here, deep within the oceans, and those creatures are even more dynamic and useful than those of the lands past, having great antibacterial and antiviral potential. There are miracle toxins from jellyfish, for example, that not only paralyze the prey but even keep it more healthy and fresh.
In 1970, in Oahu, up at the rustic retreat on the mountain next to Fort Shafter, with a handsome young army man named Patrick with reddish-brown hair, and a Korean-American young woman named Cho with round eyes. Let us say that an intelligent designer is proposed as an answer to life and intelligence here in the existence of the universe.
It is short-sighted and not an answer, but just a larger question excused away by that same short attention.
What else?
The Christian Bible reads like a feat accomplished, and it is a glorious triumph of wrong information, but for some tribal history. Its foundational sections on cosmology and the origins of life have been shown to be wrong. Life forms were not made all at once, as is immutable. Also, we have a third-generation star, and we know how solar systems form. It all came from man's need for satisfaction, as what produced the thinking error that life and substance could only have come from a higher life, necessarily, with no and so on, which is thus even more necessarily. They had gone one simple level upwards, which was in the complete wrong direction, to answer our complexity with but greater complexity, and in that effect had doomed their own argument beyond repair. But they could no longer care. for the idea had taken root for several millennia. Others can see the opposite and correct direction, that complexity is reducible to its simpler and simpler constituents, yet the blindness to what is found and known within and beneath continues. They still wishing for the above and beyond that is neither found nor known, it having as such been declared invisible, a necessarily infinite regress of intelligences, ensuing to account for each in the golden template's chain that they had suddenly broken off right away and thrown out through the stained glass window, for no other reason than the simplicity of satisfaction of what had previously been a much lesser case of dissatisfaction in the first place. Turn around. If man's intelligence cannot be explained without more behind it, then all the more God's intelligence has to require more behind it. Wrong way on a dead-end street. Look to the future for more and higher being, not back into the past.
We had long since found Kathy's Lounge, a Korean restaurant not far from the fort. And there they had fine teriyaki platters and more. And she had made some more friends. And so we'd eaten there often. And now we were back. They didn't shun her, but embraced her blend. Cho now had a small motorbike of her own. In our existence over essence, we are again up at our mountain retreat. A cat has adopted us. Fort Shafter lies below with the city and the ocean much farther out. We cook prime rib on the gas grill. The scents are on the breeze and the life is in the living. Dinosaurs still fly as birds, and the bacterial kings of forever are still with us. There is swimming in the ocean, on some days, in the late afternoon, followed by a dip in a freshwater lagoonish type of pool at a hotel in Waikiki. When night falls, the sun plummets like a dead weight, relatively speaking, with but a short twilight thereafter, and yet the sunsets are often glorious ones, since the colors are more rapidly changing. Then closeness later in the tent and wonderful sleep. Oh, beautiful sleep. Here's a good but solvable mystery. Look at your eyes in a mirror, trying to see them looking and moving, even far to the left of right. Paint the light beyond what it shines on, so as to let it glow forth. Why do we wander around in the starry dark, in the middle of the night as this lighted spark? Where do we go to know, climbing mountains, the Himalayas, to find there the wise old man? What shall we feast on? The before and the afterlife? No, for we taste this minute our time in eternity. Where is the light that shines to make us so? It was born of the many stars in that milky glow, and what of her, the beloved beyond? There is a window open across the pond, and then do we see the bright light of day. Ever this day that we sought is inside the way. Did we not tire, ever walking, looking lame? At first we did, yes, but then the beauty came. Where have we been through all of these scenes? Well, everywhere and nowhere, as but in between. Bookstore in Oahu, 1970. In 1970 in Oahu, with a handsome young army man named Patrick with reddish-brown hair and a Korean-American young woman named Cho with round eyes. Cho had finished reading all my books, so we were in a bookstore one day, in the science section, it being on the left, with the dogs and cats section on the right. A red-headed lady, finely dressed, was sitting on the floor, reading antimatter, trying to find out what particles are, for we had inquired of her. A kind of mad scientist then arrived, looking for a science dictionary, his hair much worse than Einstein's. Plus, he was all shabbily dressed with really baggy clothes and had probably gone without a bath for weeks. Cho went off to hide somewhere. I asked him if he was a scientist. No, I would be, but the pay is not good. Another lady appeared, looking for the Poodles for Dummies book. Someday, all bookstores and libraries will have to double in size to hold all the For Dummies and For Idiots books. As you can imagine, some karma spread onto these people, and we were soon all sitting on the floor and having some kind of informal class on anything and everything. I had become sort of a professor for science dummies.
What's a particle?
Electrons, neutrinos, you can find them under Standard Model. in a physics book here, so don't waste money buying a book. The redhead wrote this down, along with everything else that got said.
Maybe God is the particle, but where did the antimatter go?
Maybe a lot of it glommed together and went down a black hole or something. At least we have mostly Uncle Matter around here, thank God.
Could God be the particles?
That sounds very restrictive, as well as being a lot of information to manage. Let's just let the particles be the particles and simply have them do their thing.
Oh, well, energy comes from the stars and planets. I've kept a log, and there are different effects depending on the time of day, plus those energies of when I was born. Yes, S1, astrology?
Well, the doctors and nurses surrounding your birth would have had far greater effect and influence on you at birth than some stars and planets far away, although they do emit some amount of energy.
They determine our lives with that energy.
Yes, true, there is energy, but I don't think stars and planets just sit around thinking, what should we do to this guy? What should we do to that person?
They decided that I would get hit by a tractor-trailer truck, which nearly killed me.
Wow, glad you made it.
When it happened, I had no memory for a while, being somewhere else in another dimension, in some blank space.
Let's just say that you got the hell knocked out of you.
Could be.
The shaggy hair guy was listening too, and he was still getting perturbed at not finding a dictionary of science. But the poodle lady was taking it all in, never saying a word.
There has to be a living cause for life, Professor.
Causes of life making life can't go on forever. So no go on that one.
I'm inviting you guys to have dinner with me and my friends.
I looked over at Cho. She said, great, we'll go. And a fine dinner it was, with much further and grand discussion, that which spurs even more thoughts. In a fine mansion, no less, the redhead telling us we could stay as long as we liked and or visit her, whenever, coming and going. And such the karma was flowing, so we're having a vacation from our tent, there being servants and all. The redhead looks like a rail, frail and thin, but is energetic nonetheless. She is really old looking for being just 60. Too much sun, perhaps, plus there was that tractor-trailer accident long ago. She is a combination of the dreamy but fun, along with a positive glee. But having an open and wishful scientific-to-be path, one that comes and goes, versus the non-conceptual invisibles. Rare that a Caucasian owns a plantation, but her deceased husband was Oriental. These plantations, of which there are many in the level interior of the island, raise cane and whatever else in this fair climate. Kind of a laid-back atmosphere here, the workers coming and going with ease, even into the glorious white mansion and its outbuildings. The cook here is fantastic, blending all sorts of seafood and vegetables with the heartier stuff. Protons and wontons abound here. Cho and I can see the back and the side of our mountain way off in the distance as it calls to us from this lowly point. And so we will come and go, and Cho could have a job here during the week. Cho had begun working at the Redhead's plantation during the week, and we stayed there at night, often. On the weekends, we retreated to our mountain camp. The time has finally come. 4 stops for the tape deliveries, all in Vietnam. Flight out in 2 days. See the sights. Be safe. Take your time. Thanks. Upon return, I headed over to the Redhead's plantation for a reunion with Cho.
Too long, Patrick.
It was rough. Our helicopter took a hit. We shot up some NVA at a fire base that was being overrun, and then we barely made it to a landing much further away. Then we met the general, and he employed us. I killed some more enemies, and then nearly met my end in a firefight, and near again when running through the jungle. The thought of you carried me on, energizing me. I wrote it up. Here's my report. In 1970, in Oahu, up at the rustic retreat on the mountain next to Fort Shafter, with a handsome young army man named Patrick with reddish-brown hair, and a Korean-American young woman named Cho with round eyes. That was very close combat over there.
I'm sorry you had to go through that, Patrick. You're alive, but I was really worried.
Crap happens, and there was a whole lot of it right and left. Some kind of a big push going on.
I'm starting at the university in September in biology. Lieutenant Delphineus and Mr. Freeman got me in. They told me you'd ask them to. Thanks so much, and so now you triple own me.
Great, it will triple our pleasure. I'm going back to Vietnam in a month or so, and then maybe once again. They're using me as an intelligence agent analyst, as an oversight helper kind of person. The general is my employer, of course, so I can hardly say no.
You'd better come back alive.
I intend to. It's a long, big drive against another enemy, and it's probably the last of that. I think I'll be on Easy Street when this next one is over, for I sense that the war will be winding down, and some of it already is. A lot of the troops are hoping and getting ready to come home.
Hope so. It's Friday. Let's go out to our favorite dance club.
Yeah, enough of this beautiful valley. I do like Waikiki, but just to visit. The place was already jumping and throbbing when we got there. Vince and Alice Wong were out on the dance floor. Well, how do you like that? We got a table and ordered a drink. I kept visualizing the jungle in my mind as a kind of after-image. I'm back, I told myself. I'm safe for now. When the dance floor cleared, I spotted Lieutenant Dauphineus and Mr. Freeman's secretary sitting across the way, and they spotted us at the same time. The lieutenant waved us over. He stepped out onto the floor and saluted me. I'd never been so honored in all my life. We sat with them for a bit,
I almost bought it over there last year. I'm lucky to be alive. This is my sweetheart Jane. We're engaged.
Well, I never picked up on it. There were no signs. She was in plain sight.
True, and well, there are signs now.
Jane showed us her ring. We all got up and danced, Vince and Alice again too. Later, we talked to Vince and Alice about all of us renting a very small apartment together in Punahou near the university, Cho and I to stay there just on some weekdays when school was in session. And so we did. I'd gotten a rank and pay raise from the general. I'd give some of it to Cho. I'd gone to Vietnam again and had returned again 2 months later. I'm in Tripler Army Hospital.
Are you okay, Patrick?
Yeah, they're just checking me for a day or two. I lost about 10 pounds, and I have a sore ankle, some nutritional needs, and some cuts and scratches. One of them near infected. But I had it treated over there. I had to walk a long, long way, Cho. You carried me on your wings again. She arrived.
Patrick, what happened over there?
I'm not supposed to say, but I'll show and tell you more when I get out of hearing range here. In short, I rose from the ashes of a dead helicopter, all shook up, but well enough find a way through a very large and spreading inferno, and walk a long way back through the jungle.
Holy shit.
Yeah, and double that.
That was too close, Patrick.
I was the only survivor of the crash.
Miracle Man, thank your lucky stars.
Thanks, stars. In 1970, in Oahu, up at the rustic retreat on the mountain next to Fort Shafter, with a handsome young army man named Patrick with reddish-brown hair, and a Korean-American young woman named Cho with round eyes.
I'm doing well in school, and I love it.
I knew you would on both counts. Months passed, and it was now a week before Christmas, and Cho was on a Christmas break from the university. I hadn't had to go back to Vietnam or anywhere. Vince and Phil had done the last trip to Korea months ago. Cho even had Vince raid her old apartment to retrieve something. We lay back on the grass outside and looked at the stars.
Time to begin work on the theory of everything.
Indeed.
But first, we must wait a few minutes for midnight to come.
For?
Your birthday, you forgot.
Yeah, I did.
Happy birthday.
Thanks.
You still can be free, you know, Patrick. And if things work out with Patty, during and/or after you go back to New York in a year, and I remain here for 2.5 years to finish at the university.
And then we three would live happily ever after together?
Sure.
Good one.
My logic accepts over my heart.
You may end up working far away from Poughkeepsie.
Maybe in New York City.
The rest of the world isn't like Hawaii.
I know, and I don't care where, as long as we can be near.
You're being brave like Colleen was?
Yes, for I'm much younger than you.
Do you really want more than the two of us in our relationship?
Of course I'd rather not, but maybe you deserve to be with someone older, and with me too. Or if I'm not around for a while.
Do you really want me to be with someone else?
No, but Patty got established before me, and maybe she's getting something out of the way while you're gone.
She told me to live in love, and I did, and I am. This is now. We're together, and we're in love, Joe. 7 months.
Yes, and I always will be, with you only. I am yours and will ever be, whenever and wherever. But I can always be second if you want to be with someone else, older or whatever. Or if Patty is still available.
No thanks. You're not a second-class citizen.
Are you sure you don't wish for someone else, or older?
I'm sure. I'm not thinking of giving you up or having two loves. What do you really want, Joe? You get a first-class vote.
I'm married to you, but you are free. I want us, and I want there to forever be an us, even if we sometimes have to be apart due to school or work or whatever.
I turned 24 that night with Joe. She would be 19 in the late spring, with 1 year of college finished. I'd have to put her through the rest somehow. I signed up for 2 graduate school courses. Now we'd be at school together. Patty sent a Christmas card and letter. Not only had she gotten married some time ago with the guy running away right away as predicted, but she had volunteered for a temporary 1-year assignment in the new IBM Germany startup, since it offered a promotion. She also said that she'd be back before I would, and hoped we could date. I wrote back that I was married too, kind of, but certainly attached here, since I had lived and loved like she had suggested.